I don't know what actually happened, but it seemed everything just cut out and died. And I was in the middle of answering a question, and I didn't realise that actually it had died, and I was going on and on and on and on. And I think I gave an amazing answer. I really did, and I'm not going to be able to do one as good as that. This is what I'm going to tell myself. Anyway, I'm going to try and join the video with this when I'm done. But I figure I should answer the question. So the question from LB was, I think the issue is how do we avoid making emotions into our ethics? It would make sense for an objection to objective morality. You can see why people favour subjective morality instead. So as I was speaking about in the stream, I think that emotion is where it started. I think that's where, in the pre-morality state, this is where it all came from. But if we think about it from people, and if we're talking about subjective morality in the terms of moral subjectivism, I think that one is easily put to rest. So moral subjectivism is where morality is wholly subjective, and the truth maker is our opinion. So if a rapist decided it was moral to rape, it would be moral for that rapist to rape. That's their opinion. That is what moral subjectivism is. It's the opinion of that person that makes it moral to rape. But that isn't what would happen. I think pretty much everyone would say, no, that is immoral. And they would hold that rapist to a standard above their personal opinion. That shows that it's not wholly subjective. Some people might say that it's all a bunch of opinions. It's a load of different opinions, which I don't fully agree with. But even if that was the case, the second you're holding people to a standard above their personal opinion, you are showing that morality is not wholly subjective. So, from there, we can compare it to something like law. Now, laws are not necessarily morals. They're, so something that's illegal is not necessarily immoral. But and even though it's all intersubjectively agreed on, it isn't, our opinion won't change that law, right? We can't say, well, I disagree with that law, so therefore it's going to be, this should be legal, and therefore I'm absolved from committing any crime. And I think the same can be said for morality. Just because I think this thing is moral doesn't mean I'm not going to be held to a standard above my personal opinion. How we get to that conclusion, I think that there is still a little bit of emotion involved in it. So, for example, if we were to think about, so when we consider something immoral, we tend to think about it being something that is not tied, that goes against the purpose of morality. The purpose of morality, there are a bunch of different things that people might say, a cohesive, collaborative society, people being good and happy, and all those sorts of things. It basically all, whether it's the primary purpose or secondary, tertiary effects, it comes back to human flourishing, or maybe flourishing in general. But let's go with human flourishing. So anything that goes against that, you could say, is immoral. So if someone gets raped, there is a bit of pleasure for the rapist, and there is a lot of pain and suffering. And I separate the two there because the suffering isn't just a physical suffering, it's a mental and emotional suffering. And that suffering spreads out past the person that's been raped into their entire family and friends and everything like that. Also, some people that are abused go on to abuse others as well. Not in every case, far from it, but it can happen. So we can see an ongoing negative cycle that doesn't really seem to be something that will help us flourish as a species. So even though there is some emotion in there because there is an emotional suffering, it's still being held to a standard. There's lots of evidence about the effects of rape, abuse, and all that sort of stuff to show how much harm and suffering it causes. So I think that is a way that you can have that bit of emotion in there whilst it's still objective. We also had another question come in from essentially Leon. Do aesthetics and ethics have anything to do with each other? She's still pretty philosophically illiterate. Nothing wrong with being philosophically illiterate. I pretty much am.
So am I.
Oh, come on, you're a distinct master. um, it depends. I mean, yes and no. I'd say generally, no, not necessarily. But there's always a link with everything everywhere, isn't there? Have we lost you, Dave?
No. Sorry, I thought you were still. I thought you had more to say.
No.
Aesthetics and ethics could be linked in the sense that something like beauty is an emotional response to a particular scene or something like that. You can argue from the non-cognitive side of ethics and go with something like emotivism and say, well, all that all that morality is an emotional response to a particular situation. So it's similar to aesthetics in that way. I wouldn't necessarily argue that myself, but that is one argument.
Yeah. So generally not, but there are links. That's the only way we can answer that one.
Yeah.
So did we manage to finish off what we were going to discuss as a whole?
No.
No, that's annoying because I need to sort out this video afterwards. So I do apologise to everyone. I don't know what's gone on tonight and why everything suddenly died. The streaming software was still running, saying it was connected, but it wasn't pumping anything out. I don't know whether it's to our streaming service or not. So I do apologise to everyone that did watch and we lost the stream. But I will join these videos together somehow. I might have to download them and re-upload them, or don't know. But yes, so we were discussing the philosophy of the rationality of emotional responses to fiction. I gave my summary on that particular one, in which I said that I think it's the action after the emotion that defines the true rationality. I can understand it is a bit irrational to have an emotional response to something that's fictional, but I think it's the action after the feeling that makes it rational or not.
Okay. In my article, I generally go with the sense that they're not actually full-blown emotional responses, and that part of it is engaging with the work to get these emotional responses. So we're not having full-blown emotional responses because emotions kind of drive behavior.
Mm-hmm.
So if we really were having fear, that the guy was about to kill the college-age woman in her shower, that emotional response would drive us to want to call the police. So we have the feelings portion of the response, but we don't have the full emotional content of the response.
Yeah, that's a fair way to put it. I think it's just a cleverer way of saying what I said.
Well, no, because you miss out the feelings part and all that. I've got to do that a little bit more in depth. But that's basically the way a philosopher called Kendall Walton argues for it. He argues something called quasi emotions, where it's the feeling content of the belief but not the whole sort of intentionality and action guiding principles that come from emotion. It misses out those parts.
Mm.
We basically enter into what could be called a social contract with the filmmaker, where we will forgive him mistakes and we will engage with the work. We won't suspend disbelief. We'll actually pretend it's not real, or pretend it's real up to a certain point.
Mm.
And that's how we engage with the work. And of course, there's other ways to engage with it as well. Like if you think about Fight Club, you
Mm-hmm.
can engage with that in a purely kind of responsive way where you have these quasi emotional things, but you can also engage with the deeper questions that it's asking and engage with the deeper points that it's trying to make. Same with The Matrix or any film like that. So our responses to fictions aren't necessarily based entirely on these quasi emotions, meaning that there's still other rational responses to fiction. And those rational responses can drive our quasi emotions or even proper emotions, depending on whether, going back to you saying about us seeing our parents in the characters in the film.
Mm.
So our emotional response isn't to the fiction itself, but to the imagined scenario
Mm.
of your parents, and the intentional content is about the parents themselves, not the film.
Yeah.
Think of it like a chain of beliefs.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
And I
Well,
think approaching it that way allows you to get a deeper understanding of how to engage with fiction as well.
mm-hmm. Mm. I wonder if there are people out there. Sorry, just going a little bit off piece, that genuinely don't have any sort of emotional response to any work of fiction. You know, doesn't matter what the movie is, doesn't matter what the genre is. They don't engage with it. They play a game. They don't engage with it in any way, shape, or form. Because I'd find it hard to enjoy these things without having that engagement. It's the TV shows and the films and things like that that when I am watching them and I don't have that engagement, I don't like the dialogue, the character development, don't like what's going on. I don't feel like I'm there. You know, I go, not going to watch this, not going to watch that. You know, not going to play this game. Not really excited by it. There needs to be some form of drive there to do that sort of thing. So I wonder if there are people out there that do actually just, well, it's fiction. It's not real. I did have a friend who didn't enjoy reading works of fiction. He didn't enjoy reading works of fiction because, well, it's not real. It's a waste of my time. I'd much rather pick up a science textbook and read that, or I'd learn something about business. Or he wants to learn. He wants to read to learn. That's why he likes reading. It's why he doesn't read fiction, but he still enjoyed movies and things like that. Generally, he didn't like things that were too fantastic. Generally, didn't like sci-fi and stuff like that. There had to be a bit of a realism again there for him. But in an extreme case, what sort of person would have zero engagement with any form of fiction?
Not really sure. Um, I mean, enjoying fiction is a big part of the human experience.
Hmm. So, would it make wanting to go into the experience machine rational?
Um,
That's a callback and a
yes,
half, isn't
well, yeah.
it?
I mean, it's a valid question, but there are substantial differences where the two are really analogous.
Oh, I know. Yeah. Experiencing
Oh,
fiction is part. It's not the whole. We don't want our whole life to be fiction.
Exactly. You can disengage with the fiction, you can't disengage with the experience machine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, intriguing.
Okay, so that's two philosophers' rejections to the paradox. Plato also has one, and he disregards point three, which is, and he argues that we do have false and irrational beliefs about fictions.
Mm.
And I mean, as we've discussed tonight, there are ways to look at it where you can say, yes, these are irrational responses to fiction.
Yeah. It's a case of they're as rational as they can be.
Yeah,
Which,
which is rationality.
yeah. Um,
I
yeah,
mean, here's an interesting one to think about as well. Going back to you saying about reading fiction. Now, if you think about the way a film is designed, it uses ambience, it uses background noises, music, the silence of your room. You get it, you engaging with not just the content and the statements being made, but the actual atmosphere of it.
oh,
So,
definitely. I find for a movie that the things that get me the biggest emotional response is actually the music playing at the time that the thing is happening. Unless there's something I really identify with, like a real life situation that I feel, in general, the music can come on, and that's what suddenly brings out the emotional response in me more often than not.
yeah. So our responses, our physiological responses, because we respond to music and our brain automatically responds to that music. We feel the rhythm and, that kind of thing. It shapes how we feel. So responding with your emotions would be kind of rational because it's designed to make you do that.
Mm-hmm.
And just to show you that there can be a difference and how that makes a difference, if you think about the average jump scare, there's no jump scares in books.
That's true. If they
You
try and
might,
do it, it doesn't work, and suddenly, bam! But
yeah,
it's written.
unless they're going to put a party popper in the book, they're not going to get a jump scare out of you.
Yeah.
Um, so it shows that, films have an extra layer that adds to our responses to them. So part of it could be considered an irrational response to the film
Hmm.
because it's not a rational response, but it's not necessarily irrational. It's your physiology responding.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'd sort of go down that line myself with it because I think it's natural. I don't think it's necessarily rational, but I think it's a natural response. It's designed that way, and excuse the term, but we're designed that way. Um, so it makes sense that we respond this way to it. It's and I think, as I said before, it's what comes after the way you act um, is what actually makes it rational. Your thought process around it, not necessarily the emotion itself, because emotions, as they are irrational things. Um, so yeah, but with a book, yeah, it's interesting when you think about it like that, though, isn't it, Dave? Because, as you said, there is less engagement in a way because you're not getting the visual, you're not getting the sound, you're not really getting, and you're not getting, as you said, the ambience, the music, and all the other things that are involved in it. But the other side of it is when you're reading, I imagine most people that enjoy reading do so because they have a good imagination. I have no way of comparing this, but I assume I have a good imagination, and that's why I like reading and I get really involved in what I'm doing. So I've got, instead of the picture being there on the screen, the picture's actually in my head, and the sounds are actually in my head, and the movie is going on in my head as I'm reading this book. So, in some respects, it's even like closer in my head, you know. So I don't know. This isn't going along the lines of it being rational or irrational or not, but I'm saying that it's for someone with a good imagination, it's they would almost engage more with a book because it is fully in their head rather than it being something that they're watching on the screen. That said, though, there are very few books that have made me cry, and I've cried at pretty much every movie and TV show I've ever watched.
Psychological manipulation.
Yeah. Oh, nice
And
to see you back, Leon. Yeah, we did answer your question earlier. I don't know if you saw it. I don't know what happened to the stream. It died. Even though it didn't think it died, it just stopped publishing everywhere else. So we're gonna have to join the two clips back together later. If you didn't hear the answer to your question earlier, then I will happily repeat what I said. And yes, atheist least favorite word, designed. Yeah, because when I talk about the design of a human, I'm not saying that they have been designed. It's just a quick and easy way to talk about the way we're made up, our design, the way we're bipedal. But it is one of our least favorite words as atheists who discuss with creationists, especially because they talk about design. And then if you say the word design, they'll jump on you and go, you think it's design too because you said design. See, it's in you. You know deep down that we're designed. You're like, no, it's just a term that everyone uses and understands that when you're talking about the design of something, we're not necessarily talking about something that has been actively designed. Oh, good. I'm glad you got your answer. Thank you. I do apologise with the problems with the stream tonight. We haven't had problems with the stream in quite a while, so it's just typical that tonight you decide to join us.
yeah, always the way.
Yeah.
It's life making us look unprofessional, not us.
Yeah, but good news. I hopefully will have sold my house soon, and I will buy a new computer, which will hopefully be more stable. And if it's not, then I blame the internet.
Yeah.
Was there another rebuttal, or is that the end of them?
Those are the three most common one. If you look up somebody called Alex Neil, he sort of discusses this stuff as well, and he discusses Kendall Walton's view and sort of the idea about our responses to them being rational, depending on the scenario presented to us.
Yeah.
One thing I'd say about the book film distinction as well, it shows that we engage with work by sort of projecting ourselves into it. And we imagine ourselves in those scenarios, how we would cope, or we see our friends in them, or like you brought up earlier, our parents in the character of the parents. But with books, we completely have to project ourselves into them, which, like you said, gets us that little bit deeper. But a film, we don't just project ourselves into, but we're projected onto by the film. So it's a sort of meet in the middle thing there that makes it slightly more interesting as well.
Yeah, but I also think, like you said earlier, it's the like things like the music and the ambience and like that. But I mean, obviously, good acting is part of it as well. But all that extra stuff in it is that's being projected onto us. Is the stuff that really pulls us into and makes us feel.
A good film does that pulling automatically. And it might not even just be the ambience and the music and, the atmosphere and that kind of thing. Sometimes just the ridiculousness of a scenario will pull us into a film. Like, think of some of the really black comedies where we're being pulled in because we were attracted by the whole Schadenfreude that's going on at the moment. We're fascinated by how bad things could be, stuff like that. So we don't just engage with a film or a book because of the atmosphere or even the situation. Sometimes it's what's being told to us makes a difference.
Mm,
That's one of the reasons I love aesthetics. It sounds like a simple question, but as we've seen, it covers emotions, it covers rationality, it covers psychology, it covers paradoxes, um, rational behavior, what drives rational behavior, what drives irrational behavior. One simple question from aesthetics covers so many different areas.
mm. Yeah, it makes it really interesting, actually. Um, I
And thinking about it in these kind of ways can help us enjoy films that little bit better as well.
mm. Although it could also make people go, "Oh, yes, well, I'm just going to keep myself completely disengaged in future if it's irrational."
It's funny you should mention that because I once had a skeptic atheist say to me that one of the reasons that they can't watch Disney films is because they lie so much because animals don't talk and sing, and therefore it's irrational to watch them.
Okay, so doesn't watch any musicals or anything like that either, or any
So I walked away from the conversation
uh,
because it's like now you're just trying to prove how rational you are that you can't even be fooled by films.
oh yeah, the super smart rational skeptic, you know.
Yeah,
uh that is quite funny though.
yeah. So you can have irrational responses to films in other ways too, as just presented.
Hmm.
You could say I'm not watching them because they're lying, but it's
It's a film.
yeah.
I mean, they didn't at the beginning of The Lion King go based on a true story.
It would be funny though.
Yeah.
Just fuck with people and put them at the beginning of certain Disney films. Make more work for Tim O'Neill.
Yes. Yeah. I need to catch up with Tim actually. It'd be good to get him back on for another stream. Um, I think it's just unfortunate he's round the other side of the world. It can make it a little bit harder to agree on a time, can't it?
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know if any of you guys know who Tim O'Neill is, but he runs a site called History for Atheists. He's an atheist himself. Um, he attacks history in the same way that we sort of discuss philosophy and logic and stuff like that. So where we might point out certain things that atheists get wrong in epistemology or something like that, he does the same about history. And there's a lot of bad history that we all accept just because of the memes we see and things like that. And he, like us, often gets called a theist troll and plenty of other names. But he's actually a really decent bloke. He just doesn't take any shit, and he
You've
doesn't.
got to get the Aussie humor.
Yeah, yeah. Um, it's interesting, actually, isn't it? Because they are even more like cutting and direct than we are, and it can seem really harsh if you're not used to someone being that way, but actually it's just the way they're friendly with each other. They're just
Yeah.
like, um but yeah, he's got a channel, but he hasn't got many he hasn't finished preparing his videos for them yet. He's spending a lot of time over them. There's going to be real high quality, top notch stuff, not like the crap that we put out. But he came on a show. So if you have a look through the Fresh Air Sci-Fi playlist, there's one in there called History for Atheists. We did want to cover a hell of a lot, but we got stuck on Jesus mythicism for a long time. But we're going to come back and have a show with him at some point about a number of different things. I think there was one to do with the Alexandria or Alexander the Grey or something like that.
The Library of Alexandria.
That was it. Thank you. I knew there was a reason I kept you around. yeah, so yeah, check him out though. His site historyforatheists.com is really informative, and it'd be the number of things that you might then realize, oh my god, I took that at face value. I've thought this thing for years because I heard it when I was younger, and actually this is a bit of bad history. And then you might look onto it and you might look at loads of different sources for this, and there will be a few people who will back up these things, but they're often fringe theories. Like Jesus mythicism, it's actually considered quite a fringe theory in history. History, especially ancient history, is really difficult to find any sort of evidence for anything. There's all a puzzle where you're missing at least half the pieces, and you've got to fill in the blanks as best you can. And some people might go, well, because there's a blank, it didn't happen. And others will go, well, there's stories around it. This is the truth that we can say is most likely from this thing. And that's what we discussed with the whole Jesus mythicism thing, and how, someone like Richard Carrier makes a career being an atheist and promoting the fringe theory of Jesus mythicism. But yeah, gone way off topic there.
It's what we do.
Yeah.
I mean, we've pretty much gone over the basics of the paradox of fiction anyway, and different ways you can look at the question, different ways to answer the question. A few of the more popular answers in the thing, giving some people to think about when they start thinking about how they respond to fiction. So if anybody wanted us to go deeper into, say, Kathleen Stock's response or Kenneth Walton's response, we could always do that at another point.
Yeah, of course. Just put a comment in wherever you see us, or contact us via DM or on Facebook at Answers in Reason, admin at answersinreason.com if you want to email, or just go to answersinreason.com and leave a comment somewhere. We've actually got a speak pipe as well on there, so you can leave us a voice note, which we can either play out on a live stream or we can include in one of our podcasts that we do. Which reminds me, I need to produce the next one of those. And yeah, in fact, I would like to know from all of you, if you can leave us a comment, what film or book or collection of films gave you the biggest emotional response? What was it, and why did it give you that response? If you can remember exactly how much, if all you can remember is you were crying for 20 minutes, then that's fine, but if you can remember, well, I was crying for 20 minutes because it put me in a situation, it made me remember this thing. Really interested to know that sort of thing. So if you can leave that in the comments anywhere you like, but either YouTube or answersinreason.com would probably be the best for us. But yeah, interested to know what makes you feel in films.
And do you feel rational or irrational, having emotional responses to them?
Indeed. What's your answer to the question? We've just had someone jump in. SM Fahad, subscribed to us in November, but first time you managed to catch us live. Nice to have you here. We're pretty much done for the night, unfortunately, but it's good to have you here.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.
Yeah. We've just been discussing the rationality of emotion.
In 2 parts.
Yeah, because we've had streaming issues tonight and it died, with about half an hour to go. So I will be correcting that problem and trying to join the streams together. I don't know if YouTube Studio has the ability to do that, or if I'm going to have to download and re-upload. But I won't bore you with too much more information than that, because why do you care? No one cares. But I do apologise for the problems tonight. Yeah.
We've been doing so well up to now as well.
Yeah.
It's been a while since our last disconnect.
Yeah, I mean, it was probably before Christmas we started getting a bunch of problems, didn't we?
Yeah.
Yeah. Although we did have the problem where we recorded the ontology video and It's
Forgot to record.
yeah, well, it didn't broadcast. I pressed the button, but it wasn't broadcasting for some reason. I hadn't set it up properly. It's the ultimate answer. But I thought it was recording. But luckily, we got the audio. So there is going to be a fresh air podcast about ontological positions, but the accompanying video is not going to be there. So I'll just attach the PDF. We may re-record it again at some point in the future, but that was the second time we recorded it as it was. So I think it's probably best that we move on from that one. Um, you got emotional watching the Beautiful Mind movie. Interesting. I've not actually watched that one. Have you, Dave?
Oh.
No. I remember one of the I mean, apart from Lion King, one of the most emotional I got in a film was Finding Neverland. I think I cried for the last 10 minutes of that movie. But the most emotional I've ever got in a film was A Dog's Purpose. I absolutely adore dogs. I love them to pieces. And it was this story about how dogs have a purpose and they have a number of different lives. I know this isn't the sort of film that you're necessarily interested in yourself, Dave, but they have a number of different lives, and it's how they affect each human that they live in. And then when they die, they're reborn into another dog, and they're trying to fulfill their purpose of making their human happy. And it was so all the way through, it was tears of joy and sadness constantly, and it just I couldn't stop myself. I was just so engaged with this little doggy, it's another doggy, but it's the same doggy. I mean, I don't believe in reincarnation or anything like that, but it still got me. Now that's completely irrational, I'm sure. um yeah, so it's been a while since you've cried during any movies. They've been too stale for you. Okay, that's fair. I can say that generally I think films have been not the best of late, not the most engaging. I think the same about a lot of TV shows. There have been some good ones that have come out, but I don't know if it's the pandemic or whatever. But there has been a lack of quality stuff. I think there was a lack of quality stuff leading up to it as well. Really,
Yeah.
hopefully, we'll actually have some good stuff. Like all the writers who are stuck indoors without anything to do because no production's going on, etc. Maybe they'll write something really, really, really good. But what's the bet that once this pandemic is over, all the films are going to be about pandemics for a while?
There's already a bunch of COVID films.
Are there? I did actually see
Yeah.
a film pop up the other day called Pandemic, which I assumed was related.
Yeah, there's like COVID 21, COVID 22, COVID zombies. There's a bunch of them come out recently.
And not to mention the porn COVID-69.
Yeah, guarantee you that's out there somewhere.
Yeah, I don't know if there actually is one, but I bet if you type that into your search bar right now, you'll find something.
What is it? Rule 23? If there could be porn made of it, it's there.
Yeah. So, Beautiful Mind is a psychological drama based on a real life schizophrenic professor. Yeah, I mean, I can imagine it'd be a really interesting movie. Maybe it's one I need to check out. It was one of those ones that I think it came out whilst I was at boarding school. Not sure though, but around that time in my life where I was like, yeah, that looks like it could be interesting, and I just never got round to it. That was quite a long time ago. That one was but that's the one that you felt that made you the most emotional. So, what was it about that one that made you feel the most emotion, and why did it make you feel that emotion? And as Dave asked earlier, did you feel rational feeling that emotion towards it? There's a delay, Dave, so you're going to have to do a little dance.
Oh, yeah.
But I mean, on that front, what about you, Dave? What movie actually got you the most?
I don't really have those kind of responses to films, unfortunately.
Oh, you're one of those guys.
sort
So
of,
you're a psychopath?
something like that. Um, the only stuff I really have emotional responses to is comedies, which make me laugh, and generally it's either just a really stupid comedy or a more sort of a smarter, kind of darker comedy.
Hmm.
But apart from that, like I don't get scared by horror films. It's different things that attracts me to horror films.
Hmm.
Um, like how good the special effects are. Are there any deeper points being made? Is it just dumb, like that Psycho Gorman that came out recently? One of my favorite films I think I've ever seen, but it's like dumb and it's but really clever at the same time.
Yeah,
I
I
like
suppose
films like that.
it's like we were discussing about Future Man as well. I mean, it's really stupid, but really clever with its stupidity at the same time. There's a
Yeah,
lot of references and comments and things that go through that actually it's far more clever than people realize. But you've got to pay attention to it. But it's also dumb enough that it can be background fodder.
yeah.
Um,
You can laugh at this stupid stuff going on screen and the crazy kind of personalities behind the woman in the Wolf. I can't remember what the woman's name was. The guy was Wolf.
yeah, Wolf.
Yeah, and just how crazy he is and how conflicted of a character he is, being like super macho, but also wanting to get in touch with his more feminine side.
And
He
learn
was
to cook as
brilliant.
well.
Yeah, he was just so you can get on that level as well. But like you said, there is that deeper level you can engage with as well, and I quite like those kind of films
That's fair. Um,
and TV shows.
yes, yeah, no, definitely. I think one of the things that actually engages me in most things that I watch is the dialogue and character development. I
Yeah,
find so many shows I just can't watch them because I'm not interested in what they're saying. I don't engage with the characters. It's like Game of Thrones. I tried 3 times to get into that show. Twice I watched the first 4 episodes, and another time I watched the first two. And I was just like, I don't get why people like this. Other than the midget Eddie Izzard character, um, I there's nothing in this. There's no one I like. There's nothing interesting particularly going on, and it's the sort of stuff that I would typically like as well. And people are always surprised when I don't like it. And it's like my friend that I was telling you about, who doesn't like his fantasy and sci-fi and stuff like that. He really liked Game of Thrones, and you're just like, well, why don't I see this? I mean, if we finally found a fantasy thing that you like, and I don't, what's
yeah.
what's wrong with it?
I couldn't get into it either. I quite like my fantasy stuff as well, but I couldn't get into Game of Thrones. I watched the first season, like when it was reaching its peak. Everyone's like, "Have you watched Game of Thrones?" And it's like, "No." So I watched it, and I watched the first season. It was like, "Oh well, the first season isn't the best. You got to watch the second." So I watched the second, and then they were like, "Well, it's the third where it gets really good." And it's like, "No, yeah, no."
uh,
Um, I get that parts of it were clever in the way that it deconstructed old tropes and rebuilt them,
yeah,
but I'm not engaged with fantasy enough to want to see those tropes get torn down. So that didn't really interest me, and the characters and the stories just didn't grab me.
yeah. I'm amazed you gave it that much time, Dave. To be honest, um, I only gave it 4 episodes. I know it was the same 4 episodes a couple of times, but I only gave it 4 episodes because of how everybody was going on about how great it was. I have a general rule with films. It's I give it 20 to 30 minutes, and unless if it hasn't engaged me at that point, I tend to turn it off. Unless I really have nothing else to do, and I might just leave it on and just look at my phone, and see if it picks up later. Generally, it doesn't. Um, and with TV shows, the first episode can always be a hard one because you're laying the framework for the rest of the season. So I have a bit more patience for a TV show, might watch 2 episodes, and if it hasn't gripped me by the end of the second episode, I'll go, I don't know what people are going on about with this one. If I've got 2 episodes in and I don't like it, then it's not going to be worth my time. So we got a couple of responses on what we were just saying. So Fahad says he knows many people who are suffering from mental issues, and kind of first time you can understand what they're going through. Right, okay, so that's interesting. So what you found there was you connected with the movie because there are people in your life who are experiencing issues, but perhaps before seeing the movie, you didn't have a deeper understanding of their issues, and it brought some things to the surface that, I mean, there are movies that I've watched like that myself that sometimes have actually brought some guilt to the surface because I've behaved a certain way in a situation because that is how generally that situation would go, but because of the person's particular ontology, you go, oh shit, I shouldn't have behaved that way. And then you feel like a right wanker for being that way. Do we like the Inglorious Bastards type movie? Yeah, it's all right. I think Inglorious Bastards was probably overrated, but I do like those sorts of movies. Welcome back, LB. Sorry that the stream died earlier. You love the Lord of the Rings. Excellent. I did enjoy the series, although I was a bit disheartened by The Hobbit. That's mainly because Martin Freeman, I don't particularly like him as an actor. There's a couple of things that I have actually liked him in. I liked him in Sherlock, and I liked him in the first season of Fargo. The first season of Fargo was the first time I actually had respect for him as an actor because he didn't play Martin Freeman in what he was playing.
Yeah.
Everything else, he's always been Martin Freeman, and that's just it. And so Martin Freeman as Bilbo, rather than it being, this is Bilbo, it was just like, you've ruined these prequels for me. Fuck you. So yes, so on that one, LB, is there anything that brings out a serious emotion to you? What film has given you the biggest emotional response? What was that emotional response? Why did it give you that emotional response, if you can remember? And do you feel rational in that emotional response that you had? I gave an example about A Dog's Purpose, which is it's a story about dogs, and I love dogs, and it was about how they go to make their entire purpose is to make their owner happy. And I'm even feeling emotional talking about it now. That's how like deep that one actually struck with me. I don't know. I just love doggies. I want a doggy. But yeah. But yeah, if your answer to a movie that makes you cry was Lord of the Rings, there's probably parts in there. I can't remember any off the top of my head. So, if there aren't any further ones, if you don't have any movies off the top of your head, LB, that you can think of, don't worry. You can always hit us up in the comments after the video. As I said, I am sorry we've had the problems with streaming tonight.
Hopefully you still found what we said interesting.
Oh, God, bloody cat. I will let you out in a minute. We're almost done with the stream. My cat.
As long as he doesn't start his own stream.
But she wants some attention. Come here then. Go on. You're going to be famous cat now. See, look. Can you see people? That's Dave. There you go. And in the chat right now, there's Fahad, Leon, and LB. Yeah. There you go. You happy? You've had some attention now? Daft cat.
Okay, we're now the cat streaming philosophers.
Well, we're the DJ mixing cat philosophers. We're
catastrophic philosophers.
Banging. I got the click there as well. my cat's name, it's Dax, after Jadzia Dax from Deep Space Nine. I had a bit of a crush on her when I was younger. Um, yeah, I am a bit of a geek. If you hadn't realised, I get really passionate about the things I'm interested in. Um, and yeah, I probably go overboard with them. But you know what? Fuck it. What are you gonna do? Um, so Black Hawk Down, LB says it didn't make you cry, but you saw our troops out there being wasted, and you were saddened by it. Yeah, fair. I can understand how that gave you a connection to it. Yeah, I've not actually seen Black Hawk Down myself. I think I was working in Blockbuster at the time when that came out, though, so that's going back a really long way. Um, and Fahad says, "What's your take on Stoicism?" There you go. That was my impression of a Stoic. What's your take on it, Dave? Oh, have we lost you again, Dave? We've lost Dave. Okay, so I will, whilst Dave is frozen, I will do my best to answer. Um, yeah, I can see that you're frozen, Dave. He's responding in the chat though. You might have to go out and in again, Dave. I don't know if you can hear me. Oh, there he goes. He did hear me. Oh, um, yeah. One of our authors, actually, Martain, is really big on his Stoicism. Um, he's done a couple of articles on it on answersinreason.com. So if you check them out, they'll probably give you a much more well-informed opinion. Me, I haven't looked into the Stoics as much, so I'm a bit hesitant to give you the answer because I don't feel like I know enough about the topic. Um, whereas Dave is definitely well informed on that one. Let me see if I can invite Dave. Look, I can see you appearing, Dave. I don't know why it says no response. Oh, it's coming. It's coming through. What is it with the problems tonight, Dave? You might have to type your response rather than than say it. Is your mic at least coming through though, Dave, or is it still not even connecting that? I think that we're just we might have to draw a line in the sand and realize that tonight we've suffered more issues than we've had since we started streaming. Um, and maybe it's just uh, something for us to actually realize that we'll stop for the night and we will come back in the future. So I am really sorry that this has happened. I mean, not only did we lose connection earlier, but now Dave is completely frozen. Oh, look, it looks like he's coming through again. No, no. Okay, so next week we are going to be covering off. We're finishing off the Mino on Tuesday, and we are going to. I don't know what we're going to do Thursday. Your point about Stoicism, we might cover off that at some point in a future stream if you'd like it. I think it'd be worth us getting Martain involved, and because he is the Stoic among us, he does his best to live his life to Stoic ideals and virtues, etc. So I think that he would be the best informed in that situation. So if you are interested in Stoicism, let us know. And in fact, actually, Fahad, as you were the person who asked the question, if you let us know sort of times you're usually free, we'll try and book that stream in around when you would be. You just asked, do we have a Discord channel? Yes, we do have a Discord channel. So we're actually playing everything through Discord right now. But what I do have is an invite link that I can give you. So let's see if I can find the server link. Do you know, it should be easy. I mean, it is easy. It's just I actually find Discord a little bit confusing. But yes, so I will put this through the chat, and there are where is it? Where's share? Where is share? Answers in reason. Invite people. There you go. Copy. There you go. I'm going to put that in the chat for you right now. You can join our Discord channel if you want. I do apologize again for the issues. We do tend to just check Discord when we're going live on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So, but we will try and respond to you in the meantime. Thank you so much, everyone who joined us. It's great to see a couple of new faces in the chat as well. Always great to have you lot here. Thank you to everyone who's watching on the rerun. Again, so sorry for the issues tonight. I don't know what's caused them, but there you go. Hopefully we'll see you fly into our channel on Discord, and have yourselves a fantastic night. You have been watching the Fresh Air Sci-Fi Show. I'm Joe. That was Dave, but he can't speak for himself right now. We've been discussing the philosophy of emotion, and you can see that our usual streaming times are Tuesday and Thursday at 8 p.m. GMT. And we'd just like to thank everyone who has been here tonight. Have yourselves a good night.